He walked up to the microphone and said nothing for 3 full seconds. 3 seconds does not sound like a long time. In a press conference room, with cameras pointed at your face and reporters leaning forward in their chairs, 3 seconds feels like a lifetime. It feels like a held breath. Like the moment before a verdict is read out loud. And then Shohei Ohtani spoke. "I trust this organization completely. Whatever they decide, I believe it is for the right reasons." The room did not erupt. It did not fill with applause or gasps or the kind of immediate noise that follows a dramatic statement. Instead, it went quiet. The kind of quiet that only comes when a room full of people realizes, simultaneously, that the story they thought they were covering just became something much larger. Because what Ohtani was being asked about was not a minor roster move. It was not a bullpen addition or a minor league assignment. It was a trade that shook the foundation of the Los Angeles Dodgers. A trade that sent 3 of their own, Dalton Rushing, Andy Pages, and Hyesung Kim, to the Detroit Tigers. A trade that stripped this roster of young talent, of depth, of players the organization had developed and protected and believed in. And in return? Tarik Skubal. 2-time American League Cy Young Award winner. Arguably the best pitcher on the planet. This is not a rumor. This is not a deadline whisper. This is the most seismic trade the Dodgers have made since they signed Ohtani himself. And everything, every question, every consequence, every calculation behind it, starts right here. Dave Roberts does not show much. That is something people who cover this team will tell you. He keeps his expression measured. He speaks carefully. He gives you enough to work with but rarely more than that. He is a manager who understands that in a city like Los Angeles, in a franchise like the Dodgers, every word he says becomes a headline before he has even finished the sentence. So when Roberts walked into the press conference room and his expression carried something different, not panic, not excitement, but a specific kind of gravity that sits between the two, people noticed immediately. He sat down. He placed both hands flat on the table in front of him. He looked directly at the reporters gathered before him and he said it plainly, without decoration, without the softening language that usually surrounds a trade announcement of this magnitude. "We made a move today that we believe gives us the best chance to win a 3rd straight World Series. Tarik Skubal is a Los Angeles Dodger." The room broke. Not all at once, but in waves. One voice asking a question, then 3 more, then a dozen. Roberts held up one hand. He was not finished. "We gave up players we care about. Players this organization believed in. That is never easy. But this is what we are here to do." He lowered his hand. He waited for the room to settle. And when it did, he answered the first question. The announcement had taken 11 seconds. The silence that followed lasted much longer. Before you understand what the Dodgers gained, you have to understand what they gave up. Because this trade cannot be evaluated honestly without sitting with that discomfort for a moment. Dalton Rushing. 24 years old. A catcher with power, with presence, with the kind of defensive instincts that catching coaches dream about developing. He was not just a prospect. He had already taken snaps at the major league level. He had already shown the Dodgers he belonged. And now, the jersey he wore was going to have a different city on the front. Andy Pages. A center fielder who had done everything asked of him. Who had flashed the kind of raw tools that make scouts sit up straighter in their chairs. Power. Speed. Arm. A player who had already homered at the major league level this season and was still only scratching the surface of what he could become. Hyesung Kim. The South Korean infielder who brought a different dimension to the Dodger roster. Versatility. Contact. Professionalism. A player who never complained about his role, who simply showed up and performed, game after game, at whatever position he was asked to fill. 3 players. 3 futures. Three names that had been spoken about in the Dodgers organization with genuine excitement just weeks ago. Gone. In a single phone call between two front offices that had been circling each other for months. There was no celebration in the Dodgers clubhouse when the trade became official. Not yet. Players exchanged glances. Some nodded. Some said nothing. The kind of reaction that happens when men who play a sport for a living are reminded that it is also a business, and that the business does not pause for feelings. One unnamed veteran in the clubhouse put it simply. Those were good teammates. You never want to lose good teammates. He paused. But you also never want to lose a World Series. Here is what the public announcement did not say. Here is what the press conference language could not fully capture. Here is the truth behind the mathematics of a decision this large. The Dodgers are broken right now. Not broken in the way that ruins seasons. Not broken in the way that sends franchises into rebuilding mode. But broken in a specific, surgical way that only reveals itself when you look at the rotation depth chart and count the healthy arms available to Dave Roberts on any given night. Tyler Glasnow. Lower back spasms. 60-day injured list. Blake Snell. Loose bodies in his left elbow. 60-day injured list. 2 aces. Gone. Not traded. Not rested. Medically unavailable for the stretch of the season that defines playoff positioning. What remained was Yoshinobu Yamamoto carrying the weight of the entire staff on his right arm, pitching 8 brilliant innings against the Angels and lowering his ERA to 2.68. What remained was Roki Sasaki flashing moments of brilliance but still finding his footing as a young pitcher in the most demanding environment in baseball. What remained was Justin Wrobleski, Eric Lauer, and a bullpen being asked to cover innings it was never designed to cover. That was the reality Andrew Friedman was looking at. Not the reality of today's standings. Not the reality of an 18-7 record over the last 23 games. But the reality of October. The reality of a postseason where depth evaporates, where every arm matters, where the margin between champions and eliminated teams is measured in single pitches. Skubal changed that calculation entirely. 2 Cy Young Awards. A 2.21 ERA last season. 241 strikeouts. A whip that led all of Major League Baseball. A pitcher in the absolute prime of his career, performing at a level that places him in the company of the best to ever take a mound. The price was steep. Everyone in that organization knew it. Everyone admitted it. But the alternative, standing pat, watching the injury list grow, hoping the arms that remained would be enough when October arrived, that was a price no one in Dodger blue was willing to pay. Close your eyes for a moment and think about what this rotation looks like now. Shohei Ohtani, when he takes the mound as a pitcher, carrying a 0.73 ERA that defies rational explanation. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the reigning World Series MVP, pitching the best baseball of his Dodger career, posting a sub-1.00 ERA over his last 4 starts. And now, Tarik Skubal. 2 consecutive Cy Young Awards. The kind of competitor who gets better when the moment gets larger. That is not a rotation. That is a problem. For every lineup in the National League. For every lineup in the American League if these Dodgers reach the World Series for a 3rd straight time. Roberts did not use superlatives when asked about what Skubal adds. He did not reach for dramatic language. He said what he always says when he means something deeply. He makes everyone around him better. That is what aces do. He let that sit. We already had a few of those. Now we have another one. The room understood exactly what he meant. Go back to the press conference. Go back to those first 3 seconds of silence. The reporters in that room were expecting something more. They are always with Ohtani. They were expecting the kind of grand statement that a player of his stature might make about a trade of this magnitude. Validation of the move. Excitement about pitching alongside Skubal. Something quotable. Something for the back page. What they got instead was something more honest. Something quieter. Something that told the real story of how Ohtani processes what his organization is doing around him. I trust this organization completely. Whatever they decide, I believe it is for the right reasons. That is not a man who is blindly loyal. That is not a man who says whatever the moment requires. Those who have followed Ohtani's career long enough know that he does not speak without meaning it. He does not offer words he does not intend. So when he said he trusted this organization completely, he was saying something specific. He was saying, I watched them build this around me. I watched them bring in Yamamoto and Tucker and Freeman and Betts. I watched them navigate injuries and trade deadlines and pressure and scrutiny. And every time, they made the right move. This is the right move. That was his message. Not loud. Not dramatic. Not the kind of thing that becomes a meme or a graphic or a trending moment. But in that quiet, in those 3 seconds before he spoke, you could feel it. The full weight of what this franchise is chasing. And the full measure of the man standing at the center of it. For Detroit, this trade tells its own complicated story. The Tigers came into 2026 with genuine ambitions. They signed Framber Valdez. They brought back Gleyber Torres. They added Kenley Jansen. They believed they had built a roster capable of competing in the American League Central. It has not worked. The wins have not followed. The gap between them and the Cleveland Guardians in the division standings has grown to 10 games. The team that was supposed to build around Skubal and make a run is now 10 games back with a losing streak that has stretched to 7 consecutive games. And so Scott Harris, the Tigers' president of baseball operations, made the hardest kind of calculation. Not the calculation of this season. The calculation of the next 5 seasons. Of what it means to let Skubal walk to free agency for nothing. Of what Rushing and Pages and Kim can become in a Detroit uniform. Of rebuilding with youth rather than clinging to a window that has already begun to close. It is the trade that made sense for both sides. That is the rarest kind of deal in baseball. Usually one team wins. Usually one front office makes the better call. This time, both organizations got what they needed. Detroit got the future. Los Angeles got the present. And the present, for the Dodgers, is pointing directly at a 3rd consecutive championship. The roster adjustments will come. The innings will be sorted. The press conferences will continue. Roberts will stand at podiums and give careful, measured answers to questions about how he uses 3 elite starting pitchers in a playoff rotation. Those are good problems. The Dodgers have always been better at solving good problems than they are at solving bad ones. The bad problems, Glasnow, Snell, the injury list that never seems to stop growing, those are still real. Those are still being managed. But the trade changes the architecture of the entire season. It changes what October looks like. It changes how opposing managers feel when they open the lineup card and see what is coming at them every 5 days. 3 Cy Young caliber arms in the same rotation. In the same city. In the same dugout. Ohtani stood at that microphone and spoke 7 words about trust. About belief. About an organization that has never once given him a reason to doubt the decisions being made around him. And somewhere in Detroit tonight, Tarik Skubal is packing a bag. He already knows what it means to win the Cy Young Award twice. Now he is going to find out what it means to pitch for something even larger. A 3rd straight World Series title does not happen by accident. It does not happen by standing still. It does not happen by protecting prospects when the moment demands something more. It happens like this. 1 phone call. 1 press conference. 1 quiet man at a microphone, not saying much at all. And everything changing.